What's up, Simonics? Welcome back to a new tutorial. Today we want to implement a token refresh flow with Ionic. Because the topic is kinda complicated, I already created a simple server up front that you can also use for your Dynamic application, and I also added a bit of code to our starting point. As always, you can find the full code linked below the video, so perhaps directly open the Devdactic tutorial side by side with this video so you can get some of the snippets already and we can talk more extensively about the really important parts. Let's get into it. What we want to do is we want to create something, so to first of all log in with a user or register, then get a JSON web token back after login, but actually at the same time also get an access and a refresh token. The access token will be used to add to the authorization header of our calls to identify against the backend for authorization. But this token only lives like perhaps a minute, 2 minutes, 5 minutes, any short duration. On the other hand, we got the refresh token, which has a longer lifetime, like some days, perhaps a month or even a year. And once the access token expires, we want to automatically use the refresh token to get a new access token from the server. That's the whole idea. Now, to do this, I created a blank new application and I generated 2 pages so we can have a simple login with an inside area. We of course also need a service, and we will also add a little guard for security in the end. We don't want to put too much focus on this, but I think we should mention it. So let's go through the steps that I already did so far so we can do everything here a bit faster. First of all, I added my API URL. As I said, I hosted this on Heroku. If you also want to see the backend part, which was written with Nest.js, it's not perfect, but let me know in the comments so I can maybe create another tutorial on that part as well. So that is the API URL. Then, because we want to make HTTP calls, we're gonna add to our app module the HTTP client module. And I just noticed that for videos, I should have the sidebar on the right side. It's always confusing me, but I think it's better for you like this. Now, the app routing is kind of simple. The first page, the empty page, will use our login page, and inside area will use our inside page. That inside page is also protected by the authentication guard, which in the beginning, if you directly pass the can load to the generation, like, yeah, thanks for this. Can we have a new window? So if you add implements can load, this functionality will be automatically implemented, and therefore we can already add it to our inside route. It won't protect it yet, but it's already there. Then let's talk about the API service, because this is quite big, but not super interesting actually. So I use Ionic, not Ionic storage, but the Capacitor storage. You can also use Ionic storage if you want to. And I use basically the same flow I had in the past as well. When the service is initialized, I want to call a load token to see if we currently have an access token stored. And if that's the case, I'll directly set this to my current access token and call on our behavior subject next true. This is authenticator will be basically only used by our guard as far as I know. So that's the whole logic of refreshing the page and immediately being logged in later on. Then we got a few API calls. I got a call to get the secret data. It doesn't look like much, but this call is actually protected. So if I bring in a Postman, for example, and I get users secret, make a standard get call. Yeah, my connection is refused. Let's quickly use our environment file instead. I don't have the local API running right now, so let's do this. And let's wake up our Heroku server anyway, a good idea. So that call is protected, and we need to add a JSON web token here to the authorization header. We will also implement this with our own interceptor in the end, so that interceptor is actually the really interesting part. So without that, we get an unauthorized back from the server. Okay, that is first part. Sign up, just a simple post with the username and password that's implemented in the API. You can also find the API routes that are available in the tutorial below this. Then we got the login, a bit more interesting, same credentials like before, but this time making a call to auth and then piping the result. Because as I said, we get back an element that looks like this: access token, refresh token. And we want to store both tokens. So we want to store the access token, and so using the value access token, and the refresh token using refresh token. Because calling storage.set on the Capacitor plugin returns a promise, and we're currently within an observable chain, it actually looks more complicated than it needs to. If you call from on a promise, you can convert it to an observable. And since we do need to fulfill both promises, we first call promise all with the array of our promises. And then this basically returns another promise, which is fulfilled once both of these two promises are finished. Then we return it as an observable inside the switch map. As I said, it's not going to be an easy tutorial. And once all of this is done, we have saved our tokens after a login. We can also call our isAuthenticated next, so we're always up to date. For the logout, I actually thought I might do something special and posting the user ID, but I didn't want to add a JSON Web Token package, so I can't really decode it right now. You could easily do this, but I just want to show you. Perhaps you do a post to your server because the servers then are deleting the stored refresh tokens. In our case, it will actually not do a lot. So we will just remove our own stored values, just like before, the logic with from and all promises. And then we're gonna say we're not authenticated anymore, and we navigate back to the login. Now, the really interesting part, actually it's not too interesting yet, but the really important part is a call to get a new access token inside the API service. For this, you first of all need to get your refresh token from the storage. Once again, a bit of transformation between promises and observables. And once you got the token, in my case, I implemented the server side that the API route auth/refresh expects the token just like the access token in the authorization header. So we can manually just set for this one call our header options like this and make a get request so we get a new access token. Otherwise, we don't have a refresh token. We could perhaps already just lock the user out. Would be basically the same. But that's important for our API to use those custom headers. And of course, one function more to store a new access token, because this call will just, do I have a refresh or some? No, I don't have anything. This call will just return one access token because you already got the refresh token. You don't need a new refresh token, you just need a new access token. So within here, we can store a new access token. Okay, that already took us 8 minutes to explain. I know why I didn't want to do all this live. Now, let's go through the pages of our application, and then we can finally focus on the interceptor. So, login module, we need the reactive forms module, so we can build a simple reactive form, which should look like this in our application. Header, username, password, login, and sign up. I just kept both on one page to make it easy. So the login page, nothing really special in here. We got a credentials form with username and password. Perhaps in your implementation, you might also just have an email instead of username. On login, we call our API service login, and once we're done, we navigate to the inside area. Otherwise, we present an error. And the sign up is basically the same, but this time we call the sign up on our API service. And since we already got the information inside the form, we can also directly call login. So the user doesn't have to click one more time. We just immediately log him or her in after a successful sign up. Login page, I think that's not really interesting for this tutorial. Just the form with our form controls and the two buttons. And finally, the inside area. It's basically just a dummy example, so we can call our get secret data from the API and call logout, and the inside page, well, a button and displaying the secret data. That's really, it's just a lot of boilerplate that we have to set up to get to the actual really interesting stuff in this tutorial. So I wanted to quickly go through this. Once again, check out the code in the linked tutorial, and then we can dive into something that's more interesting. Perhaps we start with something easy, and that is our guard. Within our guard, what is this? Can we just get rid of the most of this? I think we actually can. And we will return observable Boolean. That's right. So within here, we can inject our service, private API service. Just notice it took me 10 minutes to write any kind of code in this video. I think maybe that's a new record, maybe. What we want to return is if the current user is allowed to access a certain page. For example, in our case, the inside area page. And therefore, we're going to use the API service is authenticated, and we're going to pipe the results. Because first of all, we want to filter out some values. We want to filter out and make sure we are not using the null value, which is a little hack I use. So the initial value of a behavior subject right here, it's actually a Boolean, but I use null in the beginning. That kind of works. So we try to filter out null values. And in that case, we actually, do I have a typo in here? No, I don't think so. Oh yeah, I need to use value unequal null. Once we filter out that, we will use the first result, because that will actually filter out the initial value of the behavior subject. Then we're going to take the first result, which will be true or false, depending on if we were able to load the token from the storage, or in general, if we're already authenticated and trying to access another page, we just want like the current value. And then we check is authenticated, and if we are, or if the user is authenticated, I feel like there's a typo, authenticated. So if the user is authenticated, we return true because the user can load that page. And otherwise, we will return false because the user can't load the page. And in that case, you can also, if you want to, gracefully or forcefully send the user back to the login. Did that import work? I'm not sure. Yeah, it did work. So just send the user back using the router, navigate by URL, and we're gonna send him back to the initial page. Okay, that is our authentication guard, and with that in place, we're actually not able anymore to access the inside page. We're not logged in, and we're brought back right here. Now the interesting part begins where we create an interceptor to intercept every API call in our application. I'll create a new folder, call this one interceptors. There's actually no CLI command that I know of that creates an interceptor, perhaps happening in the future maybe. JSON web token interceptor.ts, and there we go. Also, within that interceptor, let's quickly set up the basics. What we're gonna need is this to be an injectable JSON web token interceptor, and it implements the HTTP interceptor intercept functionality, interception. To use that interceptor, we also need to go back to our app module because we need to provide it right here in the array of providers. So just like we're providing a custom Ionic route strategy, we're now providing for the HTTP interceptors to use our own class, the JSON web token interceptor. There's the import, and that is the import from Angular common. I think we also need to pass in multi-true. When true, injector returns an array of the users below multiple providers. I think we need it. I'm not sure. If you're an expert on exactly this, let me know in the comments. I might pin your comment in that case, maybe. So back to our interceptor. In fact, we need to implement a little interface here. Let me bring this in. It's really now the hard part of the tutorial begins. No, the brackets were already right. Let's add all the missing imports. So it will be really nice to, yeah, just import the damn observable from RxJS. Why? Since when do I get those? I usually have single quotes. What is? Here we got single quotes, and here I had, what is wrong? What is wrong today? I really don't know. We actually already got the HTTP event. Why are you complaining? I guess because I don't return anything. Yeah, that makes you happy, I know. All right, at this point, you can imagine we're intercepting an API call. The app is making an HTTP call to whatever route, get, post, doesn't matter to anything. So the first thing that we should actually do in here is write some pseudocode maybe. So first of all, do we need to intercept? If that's not the case, we can just return the request. Yes, then perhaps no. Add the JSON web token to the header. Then we get back a result. And if the result is fine, we don't have any problem, but we also need to catch errors now. And if we catch a 401 error, that usually indicates that your token is expired, you're not authenticated. So in that case, we need to start the token refresh. If we catch 400, that is a bit depending on what your backend implemented. So 400 usually means it's not about the tokens, there's just in general something wrong, so just log out the user and clear any information. That is the action plan. In the end, this will be a 120 lines interceptor, so let's get started. First of all, the check, do we need to intercept that call? To check that, you can write a function. I will call this is in blocked list. So don't use blacklist anymore. You can easily use is in blocked list instead. And what we're gonna check is, can we import this easily? So for example, we don't want to attach our token to the header if we're making a call to the login, because we're just trying to get the token, and also not to the logout. And perhaps you have other routes in your application where you don't want to send the header. Then you could filter them out, perhaps use a regular expression, and then we can start our interceptor by checking if this start is in blocked list, request. Is it rec or no? It's request.url. And if this is in the blocked list, just return next handle, perhaps use a dot instead of a slash, the request. So that is like the easiest form of the interceptor. Nothing is gonna happen. Now the other case is gonna be a bit more challenging. In that case, we first of all need to attach the token to the header. So let's write another function. I'll call this private add token to our request, which is an HTTP request any. I hate this. I don't know why it happens. So if our API has a token, which means we need to add a little constructor, private API service. It's usually just a problem of making the whole flow work correctly with observables and all the logic. So if our API, come on, if the API service .current access token exists, in that case we can clone our request. Otherwise we can just return the request. No header is attached, or no authorization header is attached, because we don't have a token. But if we do have a token, we gonna return it. No, I'm not gonna change it. And set the authorization header to Bira and our current token. That is actually also a simple way to write your own JSON Web Token interceptor. You really don't need to use the plugin. There is a common Angular JSON Web Token plugin that I used in the past, which can also decode and checks for expiration time. But if you want to do it on your own, that's really like the easiest way of writing your interceptor. Just grab your token, attach it to the authorization header, and then return the request. That's really all you got to do. So in the else case, it means we want to attach our token. So we will return next handle our this.add token and passing in the current request. Now we could stop at that point if we just wanted to attach the JSON Web Token to a request, because that would be fine right now. But now the real fun begins, where we pipe the result and we catch errors. Actually catch error. So there we go. Now we can check if the error is actually an instance of an HTTP error response. So that is important. If that's not the case, where do I put the else statement? Right here. In that case, whatever, handle it, show an alert, log out the user. Well, not log out the user, it's a different problem, but let's just for now throw the error up the chain and let someone else handle it. It's not a perfect example of handling errors everywhere. That would really blow up the code. I did my best for this case. So now we're gonna switch. You can also do an if you want to. Just wanted to do a bit different this time. We're gonna switch the error status. And if it's a 400, we're gonna do something. To do. If it's a 401, we're gonna do something as well. And for the default case, guess what? We're also doing something. Actually, in the default case, I will also just throw an error. No, that's it. Now, the handling of a 400 error to log out the user is pretty simple. I will bring in the code, because in that case, I just want to show a little toast or alert, present this, and log out the user. Remember, our logout function calls or makes an HTTP request to the logout and then removes all the tokens. So calling that function basically completely removes all user-related information in our case. We also need the toast controller now, as I used it. And so in that case, we can return this dot handle 400 error with our error. Now we just need one more case, and in that case we gonna handle something in a special kind of way. I think that's actually the part you've all been waiting for. You'll be kind of sad that it's so easy in the end, but right now we already got a quite extensive interceptor with a lot of logic in. So we're gonna handle our 401 error, and we're not only passing the error in, actually we're not interested in the error, we're gonna pass the request and our handler. Because in that case, we don't wanna say, okay, we don't have a token, we're not allowed, I'm sorry. In that case, we wanna do another request, get a new token, make the request again. At the same time, we have a little problem, because while we make the call to get a new access token with our refresh token, other calls might come in and say, I want to get data, I want to get data, I want to get data. And we don't want to trigger the call to get a new access token like 5 times. Therefore, we need a little bit of a special logic in here that I already started up here. No, I didn't start it yet. So let me bring this in. We're going to use a token subject and a variable for this. Let's just keep it like it is, and I will explain it once we use it inside our handle 401. So what we're gonna do now is, first of all, check if not this is refreshing token. Only in that case we want to refresh. Otherwise, it means there is already an operation going on, because right here we will set is refreshing token to true, so no one else can get into that block. In the other case, we want other calls to wait until we got a new token. So what we're gonna do now here is we're gonna wait for our token subject to have a new value. The token subject initially has a value of null. So just like we did in our guard, we can now filter out token not equal null. And we're gonna take the first result that comes after null. Can I just have, can this work please? That would be great. Thanks. And once we really got back a token at this point, it means we can finally make the call. Because right now, for example, there's one call blocked 401, it's going into refresh, and we click twice and the same call comes in here. Now we're waiting until we got a token, and now we got the token so we can attach it to the header and perform the actual request. So now is the time to call the next handle our request, and we're not just passing in our request because that wouldn't attach the token to the call. We're gonna once again call this dot add token, which actually returns a request with token attached. Remember, we clone it here and add the token. So actually we don't need the token here. We can keep it like this. So now we only need to refresh our token once the access token is expired. So what we're gonna do as well right here in the beginning is set our token subject to null, just to make sure nobody's really doing any other stuff or running right here already in that block, because we have a token from the past. We should really make sure this works. At the same time, we can tell our API service that the current access token, well, is not so valid anymore, so we just set it to null. And now the real fun begins, which is making an API call using the API service get new access token, and we're gonna pipe that result. So that is the call to our API, which returns a new access token based on the refresh token. We don't really need to worry about that too much. Everything of this happens in here, and it just returns an observable. So once we get back the data from our get new access token, we can switch map, because we need to switch to another observable once again. That's usually the case if you see a switch map functionality. Yeah. So if we got a token, we're happy. The else case, I don't want to do too much in here, so I will just return off null. You can do a lot more in terms of error handling here for sure, but I will just keep it and try it because we're already, yeah, we're close to half an hour. FML. If we got a token, that's actually wrapped from the get new access token. You will see if you trigger my API, the access token is actually inside the body or the result.access token. I hope I don't have any typo in here. So hopefully it should work. And now we can return this .api service. First of all, store the new access token. We could maybe also have done this right here in the call, but I wanted to make this clear that we do it at this point. Do we want to pipe, or could I just, I could maybe also just return it, but I will use for a bit more confusion another pipe here. I think we could also have another switch block here, but I want to keep it now in here. So what we're going to do now is, after storing the token, I will finally call our token subject next with a new token, which is this one, or yeah, exactly. And then we can return, not this, but next handle. Actually, we can just copy it from here, because this is now the point where we retry our initial call. The initial call that failed and got a 401 error will be now resumed at this point, because we're handling the same request once again. Once again, there's not a full error handling in this, but we should now be able to see a bit of that logic. So let's try in. I will log in with my credentials. I already created an account. Yeah, that was not my password, I guess. What was the password then? Yeah, that was the password. I can now get the data. There's actually a little delay, but this is my secret message from the server. The access token that you get currently has a lifetime of 10 seconds as far as I know. So we can take a closer look at our network tab, and we can see now we made a successful request, the header was attached. If I now make another call, let's clear everything, we see that we get a 401 back, unauthorized. That was the first call to secret. So our header for some reason expired. Then we made a call to the refresh route, so auth refresh, using a different BIRA token. Remember, I use now the refresh token inside the header. Perhaps your API also wants it in the body. That's really whatever you want. And what you get back is a new access token. So after our refresh call, we also see in the chain that we're making a new call to the secret. And in here we have attached our new authorization header. If you want to do it fast, I can also do it like this. Doing it twice, it fails twice. We should now see one new. There's actually a small tiny piece that I missed in this tutorial to actually make it work finally. And that is within the call to get the new access token to add a finalized block. Otherwise, we're basically stuck in this is refreshing token. And so within here, we're gonna set is refreshing token back to false, because that was actually the reason why we couldn't make another call in here. So now when I do this twice, let's do it again. I do two calls, it fails initially, it calls the refresh, and then it fulfills both the calls to get the secret data. So that was actually our whole flow, 127 lines in the interceptor with a bit of console log added by me and a bit of this. I hope you enjoyed this. It actually took us almost half an hour and we just went in detail through the interceptor. So once again, the rest, the boilerplate code is linked in the article below this video. And I hope you enjoyed my explanation on building the interceptor to attach the token and to go through the chain of the whole back and forth between the refresh token and the access token used in your server. If you have your own server and logic, it might be different. You might have different status codes. The body fields might be different. You might need to send the tokens in different places. All of that could be the case, but I hope this gave you the first or the boilerplate code for a refresh token flow with Ionic using access tokens and refresh tokens and any kind of API that you want to use. If you enjoyed this video, please hit the like button and stay subscribed so you get notified about all the new tutorials, quick wins, and other app development and web development videos on this channel. If you want to learn more about Ionic with in-depth courses, a community of like-minded developers so you can learn and build your apps faster, you should definitely check out the Ionic Academy, which is my code school to help you with everything Ionic, with a huge library of courses, material, and a supportive Slack channel so we can get your app out. I hope you enjoyed this video. I will see you inside the next video. Have a great day and happy coding. Simon.